Richard, come to our pulpit and share what God has laid on your heart.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to follow that. Woo! Well, I have a lot of messages for you today. Thank you, Danny. It is not God's will for you to be sick. It is not God's will for you to suffer. It's not God's will for any of you to be diseased or in pain. Everyone can have a healing miracle and be free of all illness. Now, certainly we can pray to the great physician, the Lord Jesus, for that miracle. But I'm here to also tell you that the Bible has given us many words of God's divine gifts. Herbs right in our own backyard, Ezekiel 47:12, and the leaf thereof for medicine. Herbs and foods that I used in my clinic for 20 years and watched thousands and thousands of people have healing miracles from every disease known. So I'm here to teach you today how to create your own healing miracle in your life and give you specifics and even talk about herbs that you can use, creating your own natural healing programs to create a new life. I have faith. After 20 years in the clinic, my patients taught me everything. And I have seen the light when it comes to healing your body. I ran a clinic for the medical rejects. Most of the people that came to see me were already supposed to have been dead. The doctor said, well, you'll be dead by April. And sure enough, September, they were crawling in my door. Let me tell you here today that miracles happened every day in my clinic. Miracles happen all around me. I am very blessed. And I found that as I get older, I am more and more amazed by the power of God, by the power of nature, by the power of herbs, natural healing. And the healing power, this healing power is unleashed and amplified by the intensity not only in what we believe, but the intensity in doing the programs themselves. Our imagination, our belief, our faith, our love, all of these add fuel to your healing. If you came here today to hear a scientist, or if you came here today to hear a surgeon, I can tell you right now, you've come to the wrong place. If you've come here to revive your spirit, you're in the right room. If you wanted to renew your faith in God, this is the place. If you wanted to relearn the power of God's divine gifts and miracle herbs, this is the place. If you wanted to rejoice in the power of having a healing miracle by living a natural lifestyle, again, you're in the right room. Stay in your seat. Don't leave. Let me tell you about me, because that's really where my story begins. I've been told not to pass this line, and I shall not. I was born in upstate New York, cold country, very, very different than the temperature in this room. And one winter, when I was 11 years old, I heard a lot of moaning and crying and screaming. It woke me up. It was my father. He sounded very ill. My mother was crying. She said, please go in and sit with your father while I try to get a doctor on the telephone. And when I went in, my father was gasping for breath. His lips were blue. He was crying. He was in agonizing pain. I didn't know it, but he was in the midst of a major heart attack. During the hours that I sat with him, and my mother couldn't get anybody on the phone, we were in a snow emergency, and during those hours, he cried, he screamed, he lost bladder control, he vomited on me, he lost bowel control, and after many hours, he looked at me right in the eyes and he said, "I'm dead," and he slumped over in my arms. That was a rude awakening for an 11-year-old, and my first experience with mortality, the death of the physical body. And when I was 14, my mom dropped dead. And now I had no parents. And by 15, I was living in New York eating out of garbage cans. Luckily, I was in America. You can find some pretty good stuff in garbage cans. And at 16, I became ill. I first thought I was having a tooth problem. I had severe pains in my left jaw. Then they radiated down my left arm. I began to pass out, have really pounding, thumping, pounding in my chest, and my chest became tight. And it got to a point where 2 to 3 times a day, I would lose my vision, I'd get stars, it would go black, and I would wake up on the ground. I eventually decided it was time to go see a doctor, a medical doctor, and I did, and they ran every test in the book. They ran stress tests and electrocardiograms and x-rays, did it all. And I remember when the doctor came in and told me that I had a deformed heart. He said that genetic heart weakness ran in my family. I obviously knew that. And he said that you have a deformed heart and deformed heart valves. And he showed me a picture of my heart, and it didn't even look like a normal heart. And he said, you need to have heart surgery, open heart surgery, or you will be dead by the time you're 20 years old. Because he said there is no way this weak heart and deformed heart, along with a valve that is hardly even there, would be able to pump enough blood to an adult body to keep you alive. So he said, we must do the surgery right away. But when he described the surgery, I was quite frightened. So I asked him if there was any other options. I asked him about prayer. And he said, there's no way. He said, you need heart surgery. And I said, what about exercise? What about changing things I'd eat? Because the health food stores were starting to open up in different neighborhoods. And he said, absolutely not. I said, what about my great Aunt Hattie? Because I had a great Aunt Hattie. She was like a grandma to me. And whenever me or my brother was sick, well, she would grab some herbs out of the backyard, grind them up, mix them into something horrible tasting, and shove them down our throat. And we called her a witch, but she was an herbalist. And we always got well, and I asked if there was any possibility there. And he said, look, you don't understand. The only way we can save you is open heart surgery. Well, what are you going to do? I had to do what my doctor was saying. I was falling down and passing out in severe pain 3 times a day. And you know what? I knew when he was talking to me that there was something very wrong inside me, and I felt I was going to die. So I entered into the hospital, moved into my room, and I was awaiting my surgery. And in hospitals, they tend to group you in rooms with other people. So they grouped me with a few other younger people that had heart problems. And I met a very good friend there named Bob. And we became immediate friends right away. He had the same problem as me. He was scheduled for his surgery a week before mine. He had his surgery, and the doctors came and told me he had died on the table. So now I got my dad, my mom, Bob, and at 16, it didn't take a genius to think who was next. I was scared to death. I remember pulling up my pants very quickly, getting my clothes out of the little closet in the hospital, and running out of the hospital. And I was going to do anything, but I was not going to have my rib cage sawed in half. I was not going to have it jacked open, and I was not going to have my heart removed and a knife stuck in it, because that didn't sound like a healing experience to me. So I walked. Thank you. And I talked to everybody I could find. I asked them, what would you do? What can I do? And I did it all. I did everything I could find to heal myself. I worked on my food program. I came from a German family. We had blood for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert. I thought vegetarianism was some kind of anti-German movement. Okay? I had no idea, but I changed what I ate, and I changed what I thought, and I changed how I moved my body and the clothes I wore. I changed everything. After 3 years, I could hardly recognize the person I had become. And after 3.5 years, I went back to the doctor because I felt I was well. And I went back to the same doctor and I said, I think I've healed myself. He was shocked. He was shocked because he said he didn't expect that I would still be alive. And I said, run the tests. I can feel something different in my body. I can feel a new heart. And he ran the tests, the electrocardiograms, the x-rays, the stress tests, the new echocardiogram. And when he came back to the room to show me, he had a look like he had been visibly shocked. Visibly shocked. And he said, if I didn't have the old pictures right here, I wouldn't believe this. But he says, your heart and your valves are no longer deformed. He said, you have a new heart. He said, this is a miracle. And I said, yes, I know it's a miracle, but I did a lot of work to make this happen. See, I heard very early on in my life that God helps those that help themselves. So I had some work to do, and I did my work. And he says, you don't understand. This is a miracle. And I said, yeah, but listen to what I did. And I started telling him about the carrot juice and the veggie burgers and the long walks and the different clothes and the different attitude. You know, with every organ in the body, there are emotions that will heal that organ and emotions that will kill it. And if you have a bad heart, you better learn how to love. You better learn how to give love and receive love, because with hate in your mind, you can't have a healthy heart. I learned that. And as I was telling him all of this, I think he was writing mildly delusional, schizophrenic. His eyes were rolling in his head. This went against what he was taught, what he learned in school. But I had a new heart. I had a new heart. Later on in life, as I decided to undertake natural healing and herbal medicine as my life's mission, I was in naturopathic school, and we had a big fire, and this hand was covered with flaming, boiling oil. This one right here. It curled up into a ball. I couldn't even open it up. I was in extreme pain. And I thought, no problem. You're talking to the person who healed their heart. I had a deformed heart and a valve that was half there. And I got a new heart and a new valve. A hand? No problem. But after about 3 or 4 days, I could see that I did some serious damage. So I went to visit a medical doctor, friend of mine, who referred me to another medical doctor who was a burn specialist, especially with hands. And when I saw him, he said, you have done some serious damage to this hand. He said, these are 4th degree burns. I didn't know what that was. He said, these are 4th degree, way beyond 3rd. 4th degree is when you've burned all the flesh all the way down to the bone. And I said, well, it doesn't look that bad, because I had cleaned it up. And he said, look, and right here, he took the flesh off my finger. I'd put the other fingers down, but that isn't a very good gesture. So let's do it this way. He took the flesh off this finger right to the bone. It was just bone, no cartilage, no little ligaments or tendons. And then he put a clamp on my thumb and pulled the casing off like a cooked chicken. Then I could see the damage I had done. He said, you need a skin graft. You cannot grow your skin back. And I said, wait a minute. I can grow my skin back. I know how to create healing miracles. And he said, look, I've been doing this for 30 years. You cannot grow skin from bone or osteoblasts or bone cells. And you cannot grow skin from thin air. And I said, yeah, but what about, and I went through my program, healing herbs, prayer. I went through it from one end to the other. He rolled his eyes and he goes, you don't understand. You have nothing to grow your skin back. You'll get a massive infection. It could even kill you. You need a skin graft. Very convincing man. So I decided to have a skin graft. And the next thing he asked me to do was to take my pants down. And I didn't quite understand that. And he was looking at my rear end and drawing a picture on it, actually. And I said, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, this is where we're going to take the skin from. Now, can you imagine being in a doctor's office with a burn-off hand, and now they're talking about cutting into one of your favorite parts of your body that you use every day? I pulled my pants up so fast, I'm sure I'm in the Guinness record somewhere. And I said, that natural healing bell went off again to wake me up, to let me know that my body can heal itself of anything. All I have to do is give it the opportunity. So I walked again. And in 30 days, I had skin covering this hand. And my hand was working. And I went back to show that doctor. And when I walked in his office and he saw this hand, you could see him shake. And he goes, did you have a graft? And I said, no. And of course, there were no scars from the grafting process that they do. And he said, this is a miracle. And I said, yes, I've heard that before. He said, this is a miracle. And I said, yes, it is a miracle. But look at what I did. And I started to tell him about my program, which was even better than my heart program, because I had learned more, and I knew new things to eat, and I knew 5 different juicers I could use now instead of just one, and new ways to move my body. And he said, you don't understand, son. He goes, I have been a burn specialist all my life. He said, this is a miracle. He said, it isn't even possible. And I said, you've spent your whole life sewing people's rear ends onto their hand. You have never, ever given the body a chance to see what is possible. That's what I do. I want to see how far we can take this, what kind of miracles we can have if we're willing to use some of the divine gifts that are just growing right in our own backyard. Thank you. A few years after that, for exercise, I decided to downhill ski. And I was doing a lot of skiing, and my mind got ahead of my feet a little bit, and I even entered some amateur races. And I was in Deer Valley, Utah. I was looking at the last bamboo I had to turn around, and I heard a big... And the next thing I know, as I was told, I turned into the human snowball. And when I woke up in the hospital, a doctor had my leg in his hand, and it was dangling just like this. And he said, you have destroyed your knee so badly, I don't even want to look at it. He goes, we took a few preliminary x-rays. Take my word for it. Anything that you can wreck, you wrecked. He goes, you need to get back to Los Angeles to go to the best orthopedic clinic in the world. You all know the one that works on all the sports stars down there in L.A. Well, that's where I went after they put me in a splint and put me on an airplane, and they took a look at my knee, and the doctor came back and he said, you have ripped all your medial collateral ligaments. They're gone. He said, you have ripped all your anterior cruciate ligaments inside your knee. They're gone. He said, you have torn your meniscus. You have torn your cartilage. He says, it doesn't get much worse. He goes, there's just a little flesh holding your knee together. He said, you need immediate surgery. I said, my body can heal itself. And he laughed right in my face. I told him about my heart. I told him about my hand, and I certainly told him about my natural healing program. He told me I was wasting his time. He said, I have worked with injuries like this all my life, and if you do not have this surgery, you will never walk again. Well, this is pretty convincing coming from who's considered to be the greatest orthopedic surgeon in the world. And I was just about to let him do his thing when he told me that my knee was so bad they were going to have to take ligaments from a dead body, from a cadaver, and sew them in my leg. And that's when that bell went off again in me, and I thought, now I'm in the room with Dr. Frankenstein. I'd like to say I walked out of his office, but that wasn't possible. I crawled, and in a month, I couldn't walk. In 2 months, I was limping, and in 3 months, I was walking. And I went back and showed him. I just wanted to check. I thought maybe I was delusional. And he was shocked, and he said, "This is a miracle." And I said, "I know, I've heard that before." And I said, "But you can't believe what the human body is capable of if you're willing to give it an opportunity, if you're willing to create a natural, a healing environment, everything you do in your life." And I started to tell him what I did, and I could see his note-taking: schizophrenic, mildly delusional. He couldn't believe it. If I listened to and believed what the medical doctors told me, I wouldn't have any skin on this hand. I couldn't walk. And I'm not 20 yet. I'd be dead. That was their prognosis of me. I'd be dead. I'd have no skin on my hand. I'd never walk again. So here's the first question I ask you this morning. How is it that little old me proved some of the world's greatest physicians and surgeons wrong? How is it that tens of thousands of people that came to my clinic were told by the greatest doctors in the country, and some of them in the world, that they'd be dead by now, and they're still alive, and they're thriving, and most of their doctors are dead? How is this? And that's what I want to take a look at this morning. Because tomorrow is what you believe and what you do today. And you have all been brainwashed to such a degree by the American Medical Association in this country. You have been taught not what the body is capable of, but you have been all taught how to be drug addicts. And I'm here to turn that around. Thank you. When you go to a doctor, the first thing they do is they give you a diagnosis. A diagnosis simply means what they think is wrong with you. They look at a number of symptoms and fit you into a category. It's called a diagnosis. Then the next thing they do is they give you a prognosis, which is their version of telling the future. That's what they're doing. Same as a stockbroker or a weatherman. They're telling the future. I can't tell you how many patients that came in my office that said that their doctor said they'd be dead a few months ago. How dare anyone say that? How dare any man or woman say that? Yeah. What were they trying to do? Stimulate the patient's immune system? This is a book called The Merck Manual. It is considered one of the greatest medical books in the world. It is written by an international team all around the world of the best medical experts and printed by Merck Sharp & Dohme, one of our largest drug companies. Every doctor has one of these in his office. Every hospital, you'll find one on every floor. I have heard people and doctors refer to this as the Bible, but let me tell you, they had the wrong book in their hand. This is the book of diagnosis and prognosis. You can look up any disease. So if any of you are interested in diseases, today's about health, but if you're interested in diseases, you can look up any disease, and then it'll give you these doctors' idea of what will happen. But they miss something in a simple mathematical equation. Because you have to have two things to add together to get a prognosis. Now imagine if we wrote diagnosis right up there. Diagnosis. Diagnosis, and then we drew a line and we put prognosis underneath it. Diagnosis plus something equals the prognosis. There's a missing factor in there. Diagnosis, you have a deformed heart. Prognosis, you'll be dead by 20. Diagnosis, 4th-degree burns on most of your hand. Prognosis, you'll never have a hand again. You'll die of infection without a skin graft. Diagnosis, medial collateral ligaments, anterior cruciate ligaments, cartilage, meniscus, gone. Prognosis, you will never walk again without surgery. What the heck is in the middle? Me! This groovy guy right here standing on stage. That's what's in the middle. They forgot that. See, when you go to a doctor, they assume they know who you are. They label you the average American. That's who you are, the average American. Well, let me tell you who the average American is. And you can see if you fit into that category. The average American eats a very low nutrition, high fat, high sugar food program. It's high in over-processed, nutritionally depleted food. The average American eats 300 soft drinks a year. 170 pounds of white refined sugar, 400 candy bars, and 500 donuts. And since I don't eat donuts, somebody out there's eating 1,000. The average American eats 12 entire 3,000-pound cows in their life. Now just imagine lying back for a moment and having a crane come in here and dangle a 3,000-pound cow, and that going through your mouth, 12 of those, through your mouth, through your digestive tract, and through your bloodstream, and then you'll pray to God that it'll even come out of your body. Imagine that. 12 entire 3,000-pound cows, 6 entire pigs, whole pigs, 3,000 chickens and other birds, 3,000 assorted fish and sea creatures, 30,000 quarts of milk, and tries to pass that all through their bloodstream and digestive system. The average American has between 2 and 4 bowel movements a week, and according to my estimates, that makes the average American 70,000 bowel movements short in their lifetime. Where does that all go? Sometimes you can hear it or smell it when you get near them. The average American, 100% of Americans have diverticulosis or digestive and elimination problems and digestive system disease. The average American gets very little exercise, has hypercholesterolemia or a cholesterol level above 200, has hypertension or high blood pressure. The average American swallows 30,000 aspirin and other painkillers, another 20,000 over-the-counter and prescription drugs, and 2,000 gallons of alcohol. The average American is a very drugged out, drunk, numb person that's got a lot of cows in their mouth. Get the picture? The average American has a very negative self-image, has very little spiritual life, gets reoccurring bouts of depression and anxiety. The average American is a physical, emotional, and spiritually sick person. Therefore, the doctor's prognosis of their disease is probably right. So if that's who you are, if I just described any of you, I highly suggest you drive into town, go to a Crown Books, and you too can purchase a copy of this book. It just may tell your future. But I think that most of you are not the average American in here. I think most of you in here live a very different lifestyle. So I have one very good word of advice for you. Don't listen to your doctor! Yeah, they have no idea what is going to happen to you. Everything in here is based on the 12-cow, 500 donut eater, 170 pounds of white sugar, depressed person sitting around watching reruns of Roseanne on their color television. Okay? If that isn't you, drop the book. If you live an above average lifestyle, if you are not the average American, if you make different choices in what you eat and what you drink and what you think, medical doctors know little or nothing about how your body will react and recover from disease. Medical doctors know little or nothing about your healing potential. Remember, they saw my heart, they said dead. They saw my hand, they said no hand. They saw my knee, they said never walk again. They couldn't have been more wrong. 3 strikes and they're out of here. And I'm here to tell you that if you make these better choices and create a positive, loving, spiritual, healing lifestyle and home, that you can expect to have miracles happen just like my heart, just like my hand, and just like my knee. And that's all I did in my clinic. And I saw tens of thousands of people have healing miracles. Doctors aren't bad guys and gals. We just asked for it. We said, hey, doc, I got a headache. They said, well, let me run some tests. We said, hey, man, I got to get back to work. Give me some dope. Give me something that'll take the pain away. As a doctor, I know there can be a lot of reasons for a headache. You could have subluxated cervical vertebrae. Maybe you need a neck adjustment. You could have tight upper trapezius muscles. Maybe you need a massage. You could have indigestion. You could be constipated. Maybe you need to exercise. Maybe you just need to sit down, shut up, and take a deep breath. Maybe you have a brain tumor. There's a lot of reasons. But I don't know if taking dope is the best thing to do. Maybe you ought to try to figure out what's wrong by taking better care of yourself. You know, 100 years ago, medicine really came into power in this country. And it has greatly aided the corruption and the degeneration of life in America. Now, we would like to think, because of medicine, that we have a better life. Not true. America spends more money per person on medicine than any country of the world. But as far as longevity, we don't even rank in the top 10. We didn't even come into the top 10. So don't let anybody fool you into thinking all this medicine has got us anywhere except for being drugged up, drug dependent, and broke. Medicine promised us some magic. I call this the medical lie. They said to us at the turn of the century, look, go out and enjoy yourself. Party hardy. Burn the candle at both ends. Live life in the fast lane. And in 30, 40 years of degenerative physical, emotional, and spiritual life, when your body explodes and you have a heart attack, a stroke, cancer, lateral sclerosis, myasthenia gravis, Parkinson's disease, or an ulcer, we'll just give you a pill and you're going to be all better. And what we have been seeing and what we have proven in the last 100 years is that doesn't work, does it? There's no cure for cancer, according to medicine. There's no pill to give you. They're still hoping for one. There's no pill cure for diabetes. Nobody's getting a better pancreas from taking insulin. In fact, your pancreas gets worse from taking insulin. There are no chemical cures for anything. And any one that you think might be a cure, if you check back far enough, it wasn't a cure. It just made things worse. I'll use an example. Anybody that goes to medical school today will learn that there are areas of your body called lymphoid aggregations. The tonsils, which you have 3 sets of, the Peyer's patches in the small intestine and the appendix. They are not any longer looked at as bad guys. They're looked at as parts that your body needs. There's only one area in your body that your B cells, using immunoglobulin, can create the antibody for poliomyelitis, and it is in the tonsils. The massive amount of polio outbreaks in America only happened 10 to 20 years after medical doctors performed all the tonsillectomies. They removed the organ that could have protected us. So we say, hey, because I remember in that era, they do all the kids for the price of one. Get them in the office. Let's get all the tonsils out. No problem, they invented the polio vaccine, the Salk vaccine. Dr. Salk was heralded as the savior of mankind. They made that vaccine. They got pigs sick with polio, let them rot and die, then took the pus out of their kidneys and put it into an injection or into a tablet. We took it. Polio went away. The cancer rate has gone up 10 times since then. Now, when Dr. Salk invented the vaccine in the 50s, they looked at it because they knew it was pig pus, so they were looking for infection. It looked clean. They sterilized it. But in the 1970s, when they looked at that same live vaccine, they found 149 live viruses living in it that we couldn't see with the microscopes of the 1950s that now we could see with the microscopes of the 1970s. Just one of those viruses has been named by Harvard as the SV40 virus, which is now found inside almost all cancer cells. And as I said, the cancer rate at the turn of the century was 1 out of 25, and today it's almost 1 out of 2. So where did we get with this wonderful medicine? Polio was created by mankind and medical doctors having the audacity to think that this is not the correct design, and we need to cut a part out. And when they did, they created a whole epidemic of disease. So if any of you think that we need medicine, let me tell you, it's estimated that today in America, medical doctors, due to drug surgery, the after effects, accidentally kill 1 million people a year in America. 1 million people. In California and in the United States, it's estimated that 1,500 people are accidentally killed a year by handguns and rifles and shotguns, all guns. Now, if that's true, I propose a 6,660-day wait. Interesting number, isn't it? 666 waiting period, or 18.25-year waiting period to see your doctor, which is exactly the difference between 1 million and 1,500 people. You'll find that 1 million is 666 times 1,500. And since here in California we have a 10-day waiting period to buy a gun, but the accidental deaths are 666 times greater with doctors, seems reasonable to me to wait 18 years before you decide to go see one. There are much greater causes of accidental death. Do you know that when I was young, we had the war in Vietnam? I lost a lot of friends there. At the height of the Vietnam War, we were losing 5,000 to 6,000 people a year, men and women in Vietnam. That caused massive social unrest, rioting in the streets, and the eventual removal of the Vice President and President of the United States because of all the uproar that was caused. 5,000 people a year. We have 1 million dying a year accidentally by medicine, and we're doing nothing about it. Let me tell you, there is a massive Holocaust going on right now. So there's a big medical lie. We were told by the doctors, hey, party. How many people in here have had a relative with a heart disease go to a doctor, maybe even have a bypass surgery, only to hear afterwards the doctor say, go out and enjoy your life. You have new plumbing. I heard that all the time in my clinic. Many of us have been told by our doctors, just go enjoy yourself. We put you all back together, fine. No responsibility. Some of you who have come here are ill. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you can't quite yet believe that when I talk about a healing miracle, although I talked about my heart, my hand, and my knee, and my patients, you might think, well, he can't be talking about me. I want to assure you that I am talking to you. In my clinic, I have seen leukemia melt away. I've seen last-stage neurological disorders like myasthenia gravis, where the patients were blind and choking to death on their own saliva, healed in a few hours. I had 16 patients with full-blown AIDS. One of them was dying in a hospital, had Kaposi sarcoma cancer covering 90% of his body, and his lungs were almost fully fibrosed with pneumocystis lung fibrotic disease, which are both associated with AIDS. He's still alive today. Some of you out there may still think I'm not talking about you. And I know what it's like to be sick. I can see your kitchen cabinets that are full from one side to the other with things that you bought that you were hoping were going to get you well. And your medicine cabinet is probably overflowed with prescriptions from your doctor. I know that usually overflows right onto the nightstand, or when you go to reach for the lamp at night, you probably knock 2 or 3 bottles off it. I had patients that were suffering and in so much pain, they had prayed to God to take them. Some of you out there may have even thought about calling Dr. Kevorkian, and I want you to know, if he's knocking at your door right now, you can tell him to go back home. Everybody in here can have their healing miracle. You don't need Dr. Death. And you still might be thinking, I'm not talking about you. Some of you might say, well, I have Alzheimer's disease. I had patients so bad with Alzheimer's disease, they were howling like a wolf on the full moon. Okay? Really bad. Some of you say, well, diabetes, he mentioned it, but does he really mean type 1 or type 2? Yes. I have hundreds of patients that have healed themselves of diabetes, no longer need insulin. Thousands of people that have healed themselves of cancers, people that's healed themselves of AIDS. Yes. You know, I was on TBN about a month ago. They haven't aired it yet. And they were starting to get a little shaky because of my belief. What I have seen. And I said to them, you know, Jesus walked the shores of Galilee, healing every disease known. Leprosy, palsy, fevers, paralysis, blindness, broken hearts, mending sick bodies and hearts and spirits. You know, I know that this book here has been referred to as the Bible. But I assure you it is not. It's this one over here. This book here says that there are many types of blindness that are incurable. This book here says all blindness can be cured. I said to them, do you think when Jesus was walking the shores of Galilee and healing the blind that he went, oh, wait a minute, dude, you got macular degeneration or you have cataracts. I don't do that. Yeah, that's pretty funny, isn't it? I know. But that's what this book says. Oh, I'm sorry, you have damage to the optic nerve. We can't fix it. This book says there's no cure for leprosy. This book says there is. In fact, this book says there's no cure for cancer, AIDS, arthritis, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, Alzheimer's disease. The list is almost endless of what this book says you can't do. This book is endless of what you can do. You can be healed. I know you can. I've seen it. I have seen the glory, believe me, in my clinic of what the body is capable of doing if we're willing to follow God's gifts and our nature's blessings, a healing to every disease known of mankind. I have seen it. I have witnessed it. Tomorrow is what you do and believe today. In fact, I wrote a book. There are no incurable diseases. Just to give people the idea. You know, running a clinic for 20 years, as I say, taught me everything. But I had some wonderful teachers that were the greatest believers I know. I apprenticed with a man named Dr. John Christopher out of Utah. And he was a wonderful believer. Very spiritual man. Very, very blessed man. And I remember working in his clinic one day, and some parents brought in a little baby. Not very old, less than a year old. And it was born with no optic nerve. They told me no optic nerve, so no electrical connection between the eyeball and the brain. So the eyes are dead. And Dr. Christopher came in, and I explained to him the diagnosis, and I had the medical reports there. And he said, mix him up the eye wash and tell him how to use it. And I thought, oh, you know, you're giving these people false hope. I took Dr. Christopher aside the one time I did that. And I said, I don't know if you heard me right, Doc. They said that there's no optic nerve. And he looked at me right in the eyes with a very scary look. And I think his words were, optic nerve, schmoptic nerve. I told you to mix up the eye wash. I proceeded to mix up the eye wash, and I saw that baby 7 months later, and its vision had returned. I said, Dr. Christopher, should we find out why? And he said, who cares? Forget the tests. The baby can see. And I really learned so much because, see, my belief was a little shaky before I trained with some of these great doctors. But they whipped me in the line pretty quick. And I learned to believe in my clinic. I had a wonderful young lady who was blinded with myasthenia gravis. She was choking to death. And I mentioned her a second ago, but I'll tell you the story. And all the doctors told her that she would eventually succumb by choking to death on her own saliva. She was in the very last stages. She had been blind for some time. All sorts of facial problems. It's a degenerative nerve disease of the face and throat. I got her and I sat her down and I told her that she could heal her body. And she did something extremely radical. She believed me. In 24 hours, all her symptoms were gone. Before the juice had a chance to really work and the herbs to take hold in her body, just the power of believing in something positive. Do you know that an immunologist will tell you that on the surface of all your immune cells are neuropeptide receptors? Now, what the heck is that? Well, every time you create a thought in your body, your brain creates a chemical, and they call that a neuropeptide. So you know how it feels when someone pulls in front of you and you wish you had those laser beams like in Star Wars? You could just make their car go away? That's a neuropeptide. How about when you know you shouldn't, but you hate something, someone, or your dog? You know what that feels like in your body? Not very nice. How about when you love, when you are blissed out and you are in love. In love with the person you live with, in love with God, in love with Jesus. You feel that love moving through your whole body. Science says that's a neuropeptide. Well, the point I'm trying to make is they have found a neuropeptide receptor on all your immune cells. Because of that, science has now deduced, I don't like saying deduced. Science has deduced that your immune system is listening to and reacting to your emotional dialogue. If it wasn't, there would be no need for a brain chemical receptor on an immune cell. Let me say that again. Your immune system is listening to and reacting to your emotional dialogue. What is going on in your mind? One of the first steps of healing yourself is believing that you can do it, and not this thing. Believing in the possibilities. Remembering what I said up here about my heart, my hand, and my knee. You know what my crime was? I believed! I believed I could be well. Therefore, my body healed itself. I believed that God's divine gifts that were growing in my backyard could heal me. Therefore, they did. Tomorrow is what you believe and do today. And when I got my patients empowered with what a divine healing they could have, what a miracle is waiting for them, some of them didn't wait for the herbs or the foods. They just had their miracle on that power. So one of the reasons so many people in my clinic got well was not just because I kicked them, but because of my passion and my enthusiasm in getting them to become believers. I had a woman with breast cancer that was told by 3 surgeons to have it cut out, and in 10 days it was gone. I had so many miracles in my clinic. I could write volumes of books just about it. What I have seen crawl out, jump out, and leap out of the human body the minute a person got on the road to health. How much work is needed, I have no idea. I just told my patients to put one foot in front of the other and keep going. You're either getting healthy or you're getting sick. How do you get well? Very simple. Stop doing what you do that makes you sick. And start doing what you will do that'll make you healthy. It's that simple. You move in that healthy direction. Have any of you ever heard of a healing crisis? Okay, a lot of people have said to me, how do you know if it's a healing crisis or a disease crisis? Very simple. What did you do yesterday? If you were busting Budweisers and eating Cheetos, now they'll have to edit the tape, or we'll get sued again. Then it's a disease crisis if you're vomiting and have a headache. But if it was a carrot juice cleanse, it's a healing crisis. It all depends on what you were doing. That's how your body's reacting. I'd like to tell you about a couple tools I used in my clinic to help my patients get well. This is not the sales part of the program. This is just what I know to help people get well. Early on in my practice, I used to use a lot of vitamins on myself. It's coming back. The book always comes back to me. Thank you. I'll need to throw it again in a few minutes, so I appreciate that very much. No, I'll take it. Thank you. Next time I throw it, I'll throw it much farther. You won't be able to retrieve it. I took a lot of vitamin C. Anisha, are you out there? in the trailer? Thanks. I took a lot of vitamin C, a lot of ascorbic acid. I was taking up to 10 grams a day or 10,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid. And after 5 years of taking that, science discovered that you can't assimilate ascorbic acid on its own. It has to be mixed with a vitamin C complex. No problem. I started taking vitamin C complex with hesperidin, rutin, and bioflavonoids. For about 5 years, I took ascorbic acid with hesperidin, rutin, and bioflavonoids, and then science said, you can't assimilate ascorbic acid with hesperidin, rutin, and bioflavonoids without calcium being present. Another 10 years down the drain. So I started taking vitamin C ascorbic acid with bioflavonoids, hesperidin, and rutin, and calcium. And then one day, it dawned on me what the most perfect vitamin C supplement was. Ascorbic acid, hesperidin, rutin, bioflavonoids, calcium. And you know what else? Everything else that we will discover in the next 2,000 years. Numbers and names that I don't even know. And what about life? What about the power of planting something in the ground and have its ability to grow a tree? You don't get that out of a pill. And using vitamins, I didn't see a lot of changes in my patients. Using a juicer and live foods and raw foods, I saw big changes. So I decided to go on the road to visit manufacturers of vitamins to see what they were making. Because I had assumed that they were grinding up brown rice and vegetables and beetroot into a powder and putting it in a pill. Maybe juicing and freeze-drying it, I don't know. And when I went around it, I was quite shocked to visit these manufacturers. And at all of them, I just saw big drums of chemicals. Big drums of white powders, usually from the two major chemical houses in America. The same material I saw at drug companies. I remember looking at one of the barrels, and it said, B12, cyanocobalamin. You see that on a lot of vitamin labels. I asked, what is that? I had never heard of cyanocobalamin. I thought maybe it's a fruit or something that I don't know. And they said, well, we're not sure either. And they went and asked a guy in the lab. They came back and they said, it's mylogannite. And I thought, oh, it's mylogannite. Then it dawned on me, I didn't know what that was. And I said, what's mylogannite? See, I'm that kind of guy. I just keep asking questions, so we either come down to a food or it's not a food. They didn't know, and when they researched it, they came back and they said, well, it's activated sewage sludge. Now, you manufacture vitamin B12 in your intestines. That's what your body does. So in order to manufacture it a lot commercially, they buy sewage sludge. Now, I thought, wait a minute, I'm in the business of getting this sludge out of people, not having them eat it. But see, science sees very little, very myopically with these things. And when it looks at this, it just sees a bunch of chemicals. But I dare a scientist to make one of these in a laboratory. It will never happen. There is such a perfection in nature, in this divine gift that we cannot duplicate. And it frustrates the scientists and the doctors. They want to make artificial blood, but they'll never be able to do it. And thank the Lord, they won't be able to do it. What nightmares I see going on in the practice of medicine today. Oh, sure, I'll step on a few toes today, but that's my job. I got big feet. But I especially see it with people that can't have babies. You know, if you can't have a baby for one reason or another, then mom and dad have to do some work. But instead of doing work these days, a doctor says, hey, come on in, we'll make it happen. We'll take your egg and mix it with his sperm, and if that doesn't work, well, we'll find some sperms and some eggs. And we'll mix it up in a test tube and make a baby. And we think that's wonderful. When you can't have a baby, that's a blessing. Let me tell you, everything is a blessing. I learned that in the clinic. It may look like cancer, but let me tell you, it's a blessing. I thank the Lord every day that I had a deformed heart and that I burned my hand off and ripped my knee up, because it sent me on a journey, on a path that changed my life. In 1969, I was at Woodstock. I was so stoned, I couldn't get down the hill to hear the bands. Okay? I thank the Lord for a deformed heart, or I'd still be on that hill. Really? So these are blessings. Minerals, I don't know, I know what I was talking about. So science will look at a man and a woman that can't have a baby and say, hey, we can make it easy on you. We can make it happen. What kind of future generations do you think we are creating by going against God or nature and forcing couples to have babies that physically or emotionally or spiritually aren't able to do that? Is this really helping us out? Think about it. Think about it. There's a reason. You know what the greatest way to become fertile is? Get healthy! Get healthy and you will become a fertile turtle. You ladies will be able to get pregnant just by thinking about it, and you guys will have sperm that are the strongest swimmers that can go from here to that door before they run out of breath. Think about it. That's all I did with my patients in my clinic, was got them healthy, and every one of them who wanted to were able to have children. But doctors say, hey, you don't have to get healthy. See, it's a natural process to weed out the weak. You see it. This isn't the German in me. Don't get worried now. You see it, whether it's with pea pods or wheat or fruit. The strong survive, the weak get weeded out. So one of the first things that happens to you when you get ill is you lose your ability to reproduce, to make more of us. To make more of us. So the answer to that is to get healthy, not to find some sperm and eggs and put them together in a sandwich in a test tube and stuff it inside you and make a baby. That will not ensure us healthy future generations. That is going against nature. That is going against God. And often when I say that medicine is godless butchery, now you know what I'm talking about. I remember as a kid watching the Three Stooges, and they would eat the shell of the oyster and throw the oyster away, and we would laugh. And most of our calcium supplements today are made from oyster shells. It's the same stupid thing. This idea that we can eat rocks and assimilate them. You know, if that's true, then for lunch, why didn't most of you just go out in the back and get a few spoons of dirt and put it in a bowl and eat it? You don't eat dirt because you can't assimilate it or digest it. It's not what you put in your mouth. It's what's in your mouth that gets into your bloodstream and therefore can get to every cell in your body. And people shouldn't eat dirt because you can't digest it and you can't assimilate it. Dirt is the perfect food for plants and herbs and trees, because they can transmutate it. They can assimilate dirt and turn the iron that's in the ground into the beet, turns it into its own cell structure, and then you can assimilate it. But so many of the mineral supplements on the market today are dirt, are rocks, are stones, are old animal bones, are metals. And they may be very high in a particular mineral, but that same high level of mineral is just going to end up in your toilet. You're just going to poop it out. That's a medical term. So, eating dirt and toxic chemicals is not good nutritional science, although that's mainly what you'll see for sale in vitamins and minerals. So I decided to get my patients on a juicer. And then I saw a big difference. And people often say to me, which juicer, Dr. Schulze? I don't care. Get them all. That's what I have at my house. Okay? If we're doing watermelon, I always pull out the Champion. It does watermelon better. If I'm doing greens, I get the Green Power. Or carrots, I get the Green Power. Sometimes I pull out the Norwalk if I feel like exploding a bag of pulp all over my kitchen. It's just a matter, don't be cheap with yourself when it comes to getting well. So many of you will buy the best premium grade multi-viscosity 10W40 oil for your car, but then when it comes to your food, you'll buy the cheapest stuff on discount that's semi-rotten they're selling at half price. You are your best investment. If you spend $2,000 on health tools and a juicer, that's just a half a day in a hospital. And it'll keep you out of the hospital. It's probably outside of your house. Maybe one of the best investments with your money you can make is putting it into you. Putting it into you. Taking care of you. You think, well, I want to take care of my kids, have a pension, have some money, send them to a good school. You know what's better for your kids? You! You being here. Yeah, that's what your kids need. My dad worked 2 jobs to move us to the suburbs so I could go to a better school, so he could have a heart attack and die when I was 11, and my mom when I was 14. Not only did his plan backfire, but you know what I really wanted? Him! Think about it. Your best investment is you, taking care of you. And you sometimes will wonder, well, how can I convince my children to follow this path? Because I used to follow a different path. I used to follow a different physical path and a different emotional path and a different spiritual path. And now I'm a changed person. How can I possibly convince my children to follow this path? Just do it. I don't mean to sound like Nike, but just do it. Follow the path. You will shine. Believe me, they will want you. People always come up to me and say, I wish I could get a pint of you, Dr. Schulze, inject it into me. Well, that's from following the path, from making the good choices, from creating my home to be a beautiful reflection of nature's blessings. Come in my kitchen, you can hardly get in there through the crates of fruits and vegetables and move around the juicers. That's what you hear buzzing all day long. I always tell them, don't juice before 8 o'clock. I might want to sleep in. But I always wake up. Create that lifestyle. The best way to excite the people around you to be healthy is just be healthy. Because it's vital, it's strong, you'll have fun, and people will want a piece of it. So, I decided one day to look at the herbs and plants and foods that we have been blessed with and pick ones that I knew were highest in a particular vitamin or mineral. And I went to blue-green algae, spirulina and chlorella, one of the highest natural source of protein on the planet. But you don't get all the other bad stuff with it that you get from eating a cow. Highest natural source of protein on the planet. Scientists discovered natives in North Africa harvesting the algae, drying it and eating it. And when they examined it, they found it to be 80% protein. Up until then, the highest natural source of protein on the planet was animal foods and legumes at about 15%. 20%. Blue-green algae are 70, 80% protein. I used to go and swim in the ponds when I was a kid. My dad said, whatever you do, don't get that pond scum in your mouth. And now we pay what, $100 a pound for it? My dad wasn't right about everything. One of the highest natural sources of beta-carotene, the major cancer prevention nutrient, beta-carotene, has almost every vitamin and amino acid known. All the nutritionists argue over which one's better, chlorella or spirulina. And while they're fighting, I put them both in superfood. Because my only goal was to help people get well, not fight a nutritional argument. Running a clinic is very different. You look at people every day, eye to eye, and they're sick and they're dying, and all you want to do is help them get well. So I put them both in. I put in beets and spinach, power iron foods. For minerals, I went to the ocean for the dulse seaweed, one of the highest sources of organic minerals from the ocean. I put in the grasses like wheatgrass and barley grass and alfalfa grass, God's vitamin and mineral pill right there. And I mixed it up, and it's all raw. And it goes into your bloodstream because see, spirulina, chlorella, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, nutritional yeast are all single-celled nutrients. They go in your bloodstream immediately. That's why when my patients, see, I made this for my patients with cancer, leukemia, people that were anemic, that were dying. I had one man that we called him the invisible man. His skin was translucent. He looked like he was always bleeding. So I made this for my sickest patients. Never thought about taking it myself or using it for healthy people. And I saw people turn around instantly. So one of the first rules I learned in the clinic, whether you use my superfood, whether you use a juicer, whatever, is get nutrition into your body. Every aspect of modern life is destroying nutrition, from stress to pollution. You name it, is destroying nutrition. We are all nutritionally depleted. Most of the food that's grown today, unless it's grown well or organically, you're almost burning up more energy by chewing it than you get out of swallowing it. Thank you. Get the nutrition in. It's high-octane fuel. You will see a radical difference in the way you feel and the way you think. You know something? I have had the wonderful opportunity of cutting the top of someone's head off and holding their brain in my hand in an autopsy. And let me tell you, I got two very distinct messages at that time in my life. One was, we're not supposed to be doing this. That was the first message I got. Don't go inside the body. Leave it alone. It's way too much of a miracle for us to even begin to understand. Close her up. The second wow message I got was, this is a hunk of meat. Although I had thought that I lived up here and that my mind, Dr. Schulze, was some swirling gas between my ears, brain's a hunk of meat. Got blood vessels going to it, got waste channels and lymphatic channels going out. That simple, that complex. It's a hunk of meat. And all organs of the body can only operate as well as the quality and the richness of the blood that's going to them and the ability for the poop, there's that medical term again, to get out. Intake and exhaust. Nutrition in, waste out. You know, every brain that I have seen of someone that had premature dementia, Alzheimer's disease, you see atrophied brain where there was a lack of blood flow, a lack of nutrition going in, and you see a lot of waste build up, yellow mucus, tar, all sorts of horrible gunk, another advanced term, built up where the waste didn't get out. You want to know the simple cause of almost all depression, anxiety, brain diseases, Alzheimer's diseases, and brain-related neurological disorders all the way to strokes? Not enough nutrition coming into the brain and the waste not being able to get out. We would like to make it more complex. It is not. Coming to my brain, I don't want coming to my brain Twinkie, beer, cola, blood. Otherwise, you know what kind of thoughts I'm going to have? Not very good ones, right? I want carrot juice, wheatgrass, sprouts, and oranges, blood coming to my head. And I want the waste to move out easily. I don't want 12 cows in my brain. 12 cows in my brain, I don't know how I'm going to be thinking or what I'm going to be thinking about. One thing I have learned, you cannot have sweet thoughts on a sour stomach. Okay? You cannot have sweet thoughts with a congested brain either. People say you are what you eat. Believe me, my patients who cleaned up what went in their mouth, they became a different person. All of us pray for God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit to work through us or come through our body. Well, let me tell you, I know cockroaches that wouldn't want to come through some of our bodies. Think about it. You are so congested. Imagine going through a cave that's loaded with stalactites and stalagmites and all sorts of crusty rocks. That's the way some of our bodies are. And you will not believe the difference that can take place when you get nutrition in and the waste out. Just in your brain. You will become a different person. I had patients rise right up on me on my examination table and say, I don't know who I am anymore, with a panicked look. And I would say, great, because who you was cancer. Who you was Lou Gehrig's disease. So I don't want you to be that person anymore anyway. Does that make sense? You can transform, and nutrition is the gasoline that moves the car. That's step one.